was Sally the robot making salads.
Right.
But no brands ever gave their name to these companies because the focal point was not quality of the food. It was the convenience, was the fun stuff looking at a robot making a food, but nobody talked about the food. When I speak to my investors, I actually don't talk about the robots. I'm like, we're in the business of selling food. We're gonna sell the best goddamn food in the world. It
Yeah.
happens to be made by, I don't know, robot or Kyle or Nipun,
Right.
but that's secondary to it. So we want to focus on the food.
This episode is brought to you by 10rep, the fractional real estate team helping restaurant franchisors and franchisees scale smarter. If you guys have been following the show and listening to episodes every week and you haven't left a review or subscribed on YouTube or to the podcast, I have a quick favor to ask. It would mean the world to me if you guys could do those two things. And I really have not been consistent in asking this. I don't know why, I just haven't been, but I have recently learned why it's so important. When you comment, when you subscribe, when you leave a review, it kind of wakes up the algorithm, lets them know that people are paying attention to the show. And when that happens, we're able to push this content out to more people. We can have bigger guests. We can continue to expand on our production capabilities. So if you could do that, my promise to you is that I will continue to improve the show. My goal this year is to attend more live events. So we'll do that. We'll get bigger guests. We'll get more creative with some of the content that we're going to do. And we'll do that all with your support. So if you could do that, I'd be forever grateful. Thank you and enjoy today's episode. All right, guys, welcome back to Close Monday. Today, I am joined by Nipun Sharma, the CEO and co-founder of Appetronix, a robotics-driven food company, reimagining how food is prepared, served, and scaled. But before launching this fully autonomous restaurant system, Nipun spent nearly 2 decades in the food business, sounds like a prison sentence, scaling brands globally, leading public companies, and advising tech innovators at the intersection of food and automation. His latest venture, Appetronix, is on the verge of launching with Donato's Pizza in the Columbus, Ohio airport. And it's not just a vending machine, it's a fully robotic, right, kitchen that makes fresh, customizable pizzas from scratch, on demand, 24/7. And if you're curious about labor shortages, delivery economics, and how AI robotics will reshape real estate strategy in food service, this episode is definitely for you. Mr. Sharma, thank you for joining us today. We're off to a little bit of a bumpy start, but I think we're good to go now.
Pleasure to be here.
So where are you? You're in Canada, right?
Yes, I technically live in Montreal, but my office is based in Toronto. But we're launching our first one, as you mentioned, in the Columbus, Ohio area.
What made you pick Columbus?
Well, Columbus kind of picked us. I don't know if you're familiar with Donato's Pizza.
Yeah.
But this is considered one of the best chains in the U.S. They were acquired by McDonald's a while back, alongside Chipotle and some of the best brands out there. This is an iconic brand. The airport in Ohio is where the world's first airport was created in 1905, I believe.
wow.
That's where the Wright brothers invented the plane. A lot of history there, iconic brand and iconic location. We thought there's no better way for us to launch our first robotic restaurant.
Nice. So you have been, as I so eloquently alluded to in the intro, you've been in the food business for about 2 decades. What made you realize that there was an opportunity as it pertained to labor in the QSR space?
Right. So, Kyle, I've spent my experience has been kind of unique. Wasn't by plan; it was just circumstantial. I've done all kinds of restaurant chains, from quick service restaurants, fine dining, family dining, all cuisine types. And I've been a public company CEO. I've been an entrepreneur, and I've expanded brands all over the world. So, about say 7-8 years ago, we started seeing labor as becoming a problem all over the world, really. And I have some theories as to why this is becoming critical for the fast food industry. And this pressure on labor, pressure on margins. And when COVID came, I think it expedited certain realities in our business. One, that this labor shortage is not temporary, and this margin pressure is going to get worse, because the biggest thing that's happened in our industry has been delivery. And when you're paying 20-30%, we all know restaurants don't make that kind of money. Yeah. But that's where the demand, that's where the sales growth is coming from. So how do we accommodate our industry to meet this reality? So I would say about 5-6 years ago, I was in the market trying to find robotic companies that could help me and make my hair less gray. And I met almost every food robotic company in the world. And I'm like, listen, sell me a robot, make my life easier. But when I met them all, came back a bit disappointed. And there was a robot flipping a burger and simple kind of cute looking stuff. Yeah. But it didn't really impact unit economics. So I kind of gave up on finding something for myself. I realized we're not quite there yet. But then I met some of my now co-founders, and I had some rough ideas as to what this should look like. And because I've done so many different cuisine types, one thing I started doing later in my career was designing smart kitchens. How do I make my kitchens smaller? How do I make them a bit more automated, easier onboarding, fewer labor, all that good stuff, and cross-pollinating between the different kinds of foods I'd work with, taking the best practices from different brands and putting them into something new. So I had a general vision of what a kitchen should look like. And I think the big difference for us was we didn't think about automating existing human kitchens. Human kitchens are designed for human beings. You're 5'5" or whatever, 2 arms, 2 legs. And that's what the kitchen is designed for. So when we take that kitchen and try to make it slightly better, we're making something slightly better that's already very inefficient.
Right.
So you're not going to have an impact. And we all know there's no room in existing kitchens for even an extra microwave. So how are you going to add like robotics into the existing kitchens?
Yeah.
We said, first principles. Here's the raw materials. Here's the finished product. How do we go from A to B using the best in automation, best in robotics, best in AI? So reimagine the entire back of the house. And then we can actually make an impact. And if we could do that, then we realized, and this was now COVID years, we don't necessarily need to go to an existing space. This could be like a gigantic vending machine. Like think of this as a miniature food truck, but nobody's
Yeah.
inside. So we're like, okay, just put on a cute looking sleeve, let people order themselves. And then you have this very agile system of delivering fresh food in any real estate. And you're not confined to existing locations and existing infrastructure that's required for traditional restaurants.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point about designing the kitchen, putting the robots in an existing kitchen that's already kind of inefficient, right? Like it has to be completely reimagined, right? I mean, that's basically what you're saying. Like this is a robot kitchen. It wouldn't work for humans, probably. It wouldn't work for me and you and another guy to work in there, but for the robots, it would be perfect.
Yeah, and if you think about this, a lot of the modeling and thinking went in our first generation of food robotics was here's how a hand works like, it chops an onion this
Yeah.
way, and we move things in a very linear way. And our kitchens are designed for multiple people standing side by side. We don't think of this as vertical. We don't need to be
Mhm.
confined to this space and the movement of human beings. I think that was a mistake because now you're just trying to force a robotic hand to do what a human hand does. And a human hand
Right.
is 100 times more versatile than a robotic arm.
Right. Right.
So forget the robotic arms, look at automation, look at gantries, look at conveyor systems, and then really push the boundaries for AI to make this all seamless.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing is all of this technology, right? I mean, there's so much technology now. You mentioned AI, but I think restaurants, particularly ones that are looking to scale, it used to be kind of like a joke, right? Like, oh, we're gonna have robots cooking in the kitchen. The Jetsons, people always talk about the Jetsons as like deploying the robot around. But now it's real. Like I've seen these in operation. And now you're talking about like a pizza automated vending machine. I mean, do you think this is why generations are turning it around, like turning it down? Like my daughter doesn't want to work in a restaurant for anything. And I think maybe they're like, that's a robot's job. I know that sounds crazy to think, but are we really at that point or not yet?
So you're spot on. I don't know if we're there quite yet now, but we have to get there because when people ask me what's causing this shortage, my personal opinion from my experience is that a generation ago, the first job everybody had was at McDonald's. And you make your minimum wage, learn some basics of business, and they get organized. Now those kids are starting Facebook instead. So that's one thing. So those kids, that first job, McDonald's is a silly job for them now. And second thing, people that worked in fast food were of a certain socioeconomic status, right?
Right.
You did it because you didn't really have much of a choice. You have a choice today. I'd rather drive an Uber in an air-conditioned car than sit on a fryer at KFC. So there's many more options people have, everybody, and it's from kids to people, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to do this job. I think a big percentage of these people that do this job is because they didn't have a choice in the past. People have better choices. Human beings have evolved. We don't have water carriers. We don't have encyclopedia salespeople. I think it's one of those jobs that's ripe for automation, and it's a job nobody wanted to do to begin with. And then automation has to come here. And I think in the last 5-6 years, the other thing that's happened is things have become a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Like the vision AI systems we're using right now are very complex. And you mentioned NVIDIA in one of your podcasts, and we're part of the Inception program. We get access to a lot of good stuff from this company. And my cameras cost like $20. And they can do advanced vision analysis. They can tell me if the pizza, the correct number of pepperonis is there, the cheese is rightly burnt, all those little things. It costs nothing to build these things today compared to even 10 years ago.
Yeah. And it's also, they're not taking jobs away that people are clamoring for, right? Like they're not like, oh, I really wanted that job. Like, to your point, these kids are starting. I ran into a kid who's 10 years old. He's making a career basically out of being a food influencer. You know, these things are all real things now, and
Yeah.
they seemed like they weren't. Now, you mentioned that you met with all these robot companies and you came back a little bit disappointed. And I know you touched on some of this stuff, but really, what were they missing? And where do you think, like, you know, based on what you saw there, what was sort of the inspiration ultimately to kind of where you're at now and what you see going forward?
Yeah, so when we looked at the first generation of food robotic companies, and a lot of these companies raised a ton of money from venture caps because everybody recognizes that we will get there. Now let's do this. But the problem, I think, initially was that they thought of these as software companies. I can get 1 billion users on my social media app, but I cannot sell 1 billion robots. It doesn't scale like a software company. So that was a bit of a concern. And so these companies initially, they all invested in the robotic arms, and they were performing, one simple task: push a button for a coffee or flip a burger, move a fry basket. Yes, it was kind of cute to look at, but two things: are you really saving money as a restaurant operator by
Yeah.
having this thing? And I think actually you're spending more money because you have the same number of people, and now you have something new to handle that wasn't in the mix before. And
Yeah.
more importantly, for these companies, how do you make up money? Because you get funded by venture cap if you can show that there's a path to becoming $1 billion company in 5 years. How will you make $1 billion sending this simple arm? So the unit economics didn't match up for both parties. So I think that failed. The second generation, it became slightly better. They came up with a make line system, like a partial assembly line. I'll put some rice and some lettuce,
Yeah.
etc., in a bowl so we can speed up the assembly line. I think there is some merit to that, but the reality is these machines are humongous.
Yeah.
There is no room in existing kitchens. So if you want to start from scratch, that means you're starting a whole new brand from scratch, and it'll take a long time for you to scale up. Again, how do you as a tech company make money? And are you really saving a ton of money as a restaurant company to even have these in your locations?
Yeah.
So that became the challenge. I think the third generation companies like us were like, forget existing kitchens. Let's get out of there because they're not suitable for us. So how
Yeah.
do you reimagine the entire back of the house? How do you take all the pain points in a traditional restaurant? You're limited to where you can put a restaurant. You need HVAC systems and water and all that kind of stuff. What if you create a self-contained system, a vending machine that can go in any real estate? And if you really want to do takeout and delivery, which is more than 50% of the business for every fast food restaurant, how do you make it profitable? Labor can range, depending if you're in California or Texas, 20 to 30% of your total sales. Our number is about 4% for this because we only need a human being to refill the ingredients. And we've estimated we need about 4 hours of one human being's time in one day in a busy location.
Wow.
So when you've taken that big chunk out, and then again, depending on where you are, can be up to 10% of your sales.
Oh, yeah.
We're kind of we're a vending machine. We don't have much of a rent here.
Right.
So I've taken almost 40% of sales out of the equation and replaced it with about 5-6% max. So I have this giant savings in the middle. And our strategy also became, instead of me going and competing in street locations, we're exclusively doing this with companies like HMS Host, Compass, Sodexo, Aramark. Between these guys, they have hundreds of thousands of airports and hospitals and universities and office
Yeah.
towers. In many cases, they're 24/7 places, but nothing is open after 8 p.m. Many
Yeah.
restaurants, many airports just haven't bounced back after COVID because they cannot find employees.
Yeah. I know.
So we're not taking away jobs. We're actually filling a massive void. I think there's 200,000 or 300,000 unfulfilled positions in the US right now in the restaurant industry. So we're going initially where places where there's nothing. There used to be 3 restaurants, now there's one. Well, there's one more now, and it's ready for you 24/7. So we're really filling a void. We're not taking anything away.
Are you finding that brands, like obviously Donato's is on board, but other brands, are they more receptive to kind of taking the call, so to speak? I mean, to hearing this out, I mean, based on their own labor situations, they've been feeling the pain since COVID, probably beforehand. Are they more like, all right, let's see what we can do here? Or is it still a little bit like a tough sell?
Yeah, I think the initial sell was to brands' existing kitchens, right? I can go to White Castle, hey, I'll help you make your fries slightly more easier.
Right.
So everybody wanted to experiment with that. A lot of companies did. And I think there's mixed results from that approach. Going into, and then some people have tried what I've done. There was Sally the robot making salads.
Right.
But no brands ever gave their name to these companies because the focal point was not quality of the food. It was the convenience, was the fun stuff looking at a robot making a food.
Yeah.
But nobody talked about the food. When I speak to my investors, I actually don't talk about the robots. I'm like, we're in the business of selling food. We're going to sell the best goddamn food in the world.
Yeah.
It happens to be made by, I don't know, robot or Kyle or Nipun,
Correct.
but that's secondary to it. So we want to focus on the food.
Are you a growing franchise caught in the real estate trap? You know you need experienced real estate leadership to grow, but you're facing an impossible choice. You either have to hire a full-time director of real estate at $200,000 a year, or risk your brand's future with generic commercial brokers who don't understand the restaurant business, nor do they understand franchising. The cost of getting it wrong is staggering. Check this out. 72% of emerging brands cite real estate delays as their number one challenge, with each delayed opening burning through about $48,000 in lost revenue every single month. Poor locations don't just hurt the profits, they can permanently damage your franchise's reputation. That's where 10rep comes in. We've created a revolutionary solution that gives you senior level real estate expertise at a fraction of the cost for a full-time hire. Our flexible month-to-month model combines deep operational experience, cutting-edge AI, and nationwide network of franchise specialized brokers, all without the burden of salaries, benefits, travel, office expenses, or even long-term contracts. Join successful brands who trust 10rep to turn real estate from a growth challenge into a strategic advantage. Whether you need full service management or project-based support, we scale with you. Don't let real estate hold your franchise back. Visit www.10rep.co to learn how 10rep can help you scale smarter.
And Carl, every time I've done a demo and people have come from the media, investors, potential clients, and they get fascinated when they see the machine, they take a couple of selfies. But when they eat the food, every single time it's like, oh my God, this is the best pad thai I've ever had. Oh my God, this is the best pizza I've ever had.
Yeah.
And that's what they lead with. And I think that was important to us. So this partnership with Donato's, this machine will not go live unless the founders of Donato's, the CEOs, the entire management team is not 100% satisfied with this. So that was our cutoff of, if we cannot convince them, we're done. We're toast as a company, because we wanted to make the best pizza in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what allowed us to sort of fine tune our offering. We're selling food. We're not selling machines. We actually don't even sell the machine to anybody. We do a revenue share.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's kind of like how I've been, I was talking to somebody yesterday about AI, and I feel like in my business, so I work in real estate for restaurants and help them grow and stuff, mostly franchise concepts. And I feel like sometimes people come out and say it. Sometimes I can just sense it, that when you say AI, it's like a little bit of an eye roll. Like, oh yeah, I know, I have ChatGPT, but they don't know what it is, right? So I said to my partner, I said, we don't even mention it.
Yeah.
Right? Because the end result is like, we're finding sites with AI in half the time. Do you need to know how we do it, or do you just want the sites? And I think that's what it is, right? They don't need to necessarily know how the sausage is made, but if it's there for you, what do you care, right? I mean, is that a little bit of that, right?
Yeah. You have a best product. You need to know how? Sure, I'll tell you, but let's focus on what I'm doing over here. Let's look at this.
Results. Yeah. So are you, with these other concepts that you're talking to, are they completely reimagining their menu? Are they how are they adapting on their side?
So that's a good thing, right? And this is where my background came in a bit helpful, because I'm the only non-engineer on the team. Half the conversation like, Nipun, you're not an engineer. This is not how it works. I'm like, you guys figure it out. It has to be done this way. Yeah. Because one thing we cannot change is the supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to reinvent the supply chain. I'm not going to open my own commissary so I can sell food that only goes into my machine. Right. That many people tried that. It's a different business. I'm like, we want to take the existing supply chain. We just want to make sure that our machines can adapt to that reality and produce that food. Mm-hmm. If we partner with any brand, it has to be their exact menu, the exact recipes, the exact presentation that their customers are used to. We cannot change that perception. Yeah. We cannot start our own brand. So when we do a Donato's pizza, it is the Donato's pizza. The medium pizza comes with 53 slices of pepperoni. The sauce tastes a certain way. The cheese is burnt a certain way. They have a Romano shaker that works a certain way. The expectation, and again, we're launching in their hometown, and people are rabid fans of this brand for 60 years. So it has to be a pizza that they expect, no variation from that. So for us, the incoming part and the outgoing part is exactly the same. Yeah. Magic happens inside the box.
Yeah. That's amazing, because there's also the consistency part, right? The robot's not going to say, you know what, if it was my place, I'd add a little bit more cheese here. Yeah. Right? You get something the cooks doing their own thing. The robot's just going to do, hey, it's a tablespoon of Romano cheese, period, or whatever it is, right? I mean, that's probably that's helpful, right, to the operator.
That's why AI comes in for us. So we use AI for two different elements. One is, of course, for the food quality. So the cameras have been training on what is an acceptable pizza for a long time now. And they've come up with their own metrics. Yes, one is simple number of slices of pepperoni. That's easy. how it's distributed, how the cheese is blackened. It'll recognize, like an experienced chef, what is an acceptable pizza. If for any reason it's not, it's discarded actually. So
Wow.
the AI is doing the work of a very experienced chef. The second thing we use AI is for predictive inventory management. We know that in an airport, flights are coming at a certain hour. People are going to be walking in front of the machine at this time. At least 50% of the orders are going to be pepperoni. So let's start making that so we can speed up the process. It's
Yeah.
also about predictive maintenance of the machine. We know that certain parts are being used after 2,000 times. They're going to wear out. We need to make sure that we have a spare part in inventory. What's the best downtime to make the fix? Make sure there's people available to make that change. So all those things, when I have one machine, I can manage it. When I have 10,000, it needs to manage itself.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, our machine from day one is actually managing itself. We'll make
Right.
sure that in the first few months, everything is on code, but the results we've seen are phenomenal.
So are these robots, are you aiming them, or are they different, maybe they're different revenue streams? Are they more towards the restaurant side or more towards like the vending machine side or any other types of uses that we haven't discussed?
Well, we really position ourselves as a restaurant and a box solution for existing QSR brands. And we want to make sure we partner with the number one in every category. So, like I said, for me, food is important. It has to be the best tasting pizza, best tasting pad thai, best tasting whatever. So, we've taken the existing QSR restaurant. Think of this as a food court area. So, the front will look similar to that and it's delivering on that experience and that expectation. So, it is that restaurant. It is in a giant vending machine,
I got you.
but it is a brand that's existing, that's hopefully number one in its category. So
Yeah.
we're not changing that perception.
Wow. I mean, my brain's going crazy, but like the opportunities to kind of do different things across different types of cuisines are limitless, right? I mean, ghost kitchen with fully automated something, because those guys tend to have smaller menus and stuff. So you're obviously ahead of the game. Are you seeing any other kind of technologies out there that are sort of like a complement to the robots, things that they work well with, or other kind of efficiencies that we might be looking at coming down the road here for restaurants?
Yeah, some things that we've developed, and as more people came and saw our machines, they would like certain components of this inside the existing kitchens. My investors, by the way, are split between technology people and robotics people, and celebrity chefs like Tom Colicchio and some interesting other people that know what food is all about. So when people ask us these innovations that you've done, they'll be very helpful to us in our kitchens. In some cases, we'll give it up because they're an investor, because I have bragging rights to help some famous person's restaurant. But there's no way for us to make money from that, right? So, for example, the way we store our ingredients, we have full connectivity to traceability and shelf life. We're monitoring the temperatures of every component of the machine 24/7. So if something goes off, it will automatically reject that food. Or on the flip side, if chicken's expiring in 24 hours, hey, 50% of your pad, let's get rid of the food. When you start looking backwards, there's a storm in Florida, tomato prices are 400%. Well, let's pivot to recipes that don't include tomatoes. So when you add all that kind of stuff in your entire supply chain, this becomes really valuable to everybody.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these little innovations that are happening, from food control to food safety, traceability, and of course economics of what to sell, what to push. And as you learn about different environments, and every airport too, it's different. The clientele is different. The age groups are different. Ethnicities are different. The tastes are slightly different. So when you can accommodate micro levels of flexibility to the customers in different areas, you're providing a much better experience.
Oh, yeah.
So all those there's many of those components that make our machine smart. And I think it'll be helpful to all restaurants. But in the near future, we don't have any plans to sell that.
Is there any cuisine or type of QSR that the robots are really struggling with? Like the ones that we can't get them to do, roll burritos, for example, I'm thinking about.
So when we started a company, it wasn't supposed to be a company. It was an experimental project. And in my experience, the toughest thing to automate was Asian food, because of the different kind of ingredients. You have sloppy noodles, you have fat snow peas, chunks of broccoli, shredded carrots. So each of these things for a human being is a no-brainer. It's very difficult for a machine to sort it, to calculate it, to dispense it. And if we can do this, we can do anything. So we started in that journey, and then we created that first machine that could do all that. Then the Donato's opportunity came by. To me, pizza was probably the easiest on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So we first started with the hardest. So if we can't do it, guys, let's not get into this game.
Right.
If we can do this, we can do anything. So right now we do focus on bowls. Pizza is fine, but it'll be a Mexican bowl, it'll be a burrito bowl, it could be a pad thai bowl. So that's easy. We've kind of put our expertise around that. But yes, I do get a lot of questions. Can we make Subway sandwiches? Can we do burrito rolls? The answer to that is yes. And we probably will get there at one point. But between you and me, Kyle, I think we're kind of busy for the next 100 years.
Yeah, I bet. I would imagine. Yeah, I'm
At one
sure.
point, the engineers will need a challenge. We'll do it for that reason, not because it makes business sense for us today.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception about these robots, or what that people, you run into these guys. Obviously, there's a little bit of, I don't know if that's going to work. I need this, that, and the other thing. You get chefs involved, forget it. They're a whole separate ball of wax. But what are people kind of really struggling when they try to wrap their head around this idea?
So first is that people will tell me that, I saw this place in San Francisco at the airport making coffee and what? So there was, that's a good question. And the second question I get is, and, I want to see the guy making my food. There's that story and this machine giving me food. I just don't connect to it. So my answer to the questions is that first, a robot restaurant needs to deliver on a restaurant experience. That means high speed, high volume multitasking. So if I'm going to wait for like 45 minutes to get my coffee because it makes one coffee at a time and there's 10 people in front of me, it's not a business plan. So it doesn't work. So that was number one. And number two, more than half, in some cases, 80% of his sales in fast food, quick service restaurant comes from takeout and delivery. People don't even communicate with anybody. There's a shelf in front, I pick up my bag and go. Uber gets me your food to my bag. They don't really care about that magic of a teenage with pimples and snot coming out making burgers for you. There's no magic in that. I think there's magic going to a Michelin star restaurant, any kind of a great family dining restaurant. You're going for that experiential value, which is going to get better in my opinion. I think people will spend more time in these great restaurants with friends and families celebrating all that good stuff. But when you just want Netflix and chill, you want food delivered, you need it to be efficient, you need it to taste good, you need it to be food safety audited, and you need it to have good value. So we're going after that market. So that's a $1 trillion market globally, where people just want their favorite brands coming up at a good time, at nice temperature, safe, and all that good stuff. So yeah, I don't think that magic of people in delivery really makes a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think people are really excited to take a look at the folks at McDonald's making the burgers and fries, right? Just give me what I want to eat and I'll get out of here. Kind of thing.
As long as the food tastes great, right? That's the ultimate. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from, I think, but we'll see.
Yeah, when we had the restaurant, my partner always used to say, man, this doesn't travel well. This is not going to travel well. And I said, well, that's for you. I think some people just don't care. I thought it was like a different subset, right? Just give me something to eat. I'm hungry or I'm playing a video game. I don't want to bother with the cooking. This is just, I have to eat. And that's what it was. Yeah. So there's a lot of folks looking at tech and robots are certainly part of it. But as a founder yourself, and it's other founders who are listening to the show or guys who have ideas about tech, what would be one piece of advice that you would have for them in terms of how to approach their startup?
I think in our space, and I do mentor a couple of my competitors because I think the market is really, really big and I want every food tech company to succeed. So I will help every single food tech company in any capacity I can. I think one thing that people need to understand is if you are a tech company, you're looking for tech investors. Tech investors have an expectation. And that simple question is, can you become $1 billion company in the next 5 years? And it's not because you're making losses. You're generating substantial revenue and you're doing it in a path to profitability. Hardware is not like software. It cannot scale like software.
Yeah.
And I position our company not as selling robots. Like I said, we are a next generation quick service company. If you look at young chains like Sweet Green and Kava, they're worth billions of dollars. It's because they're considered the next gen thing that can grow up to become a McDonald's one day. We're in that category. So I don't need to sell 1 billion robots. I think we can become $1 billion company and a couple hundred of these units in the market. So that's how we position ourselves. I think so. All the companies in this space need to really give the answer. Can you become $1 billion company? Yes, there's a risk, but is there a path to getting there? Does it make sense from unit economics? And are you truly saving money for the operators? Are you truly making this meaningfully profitable?
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, it's interesting that you're sort of consulting these guys. I guess it's, the more of us involved in the space, the more, common it becomes. And you're saying there's enough market there for everybody to kind of get their own piece. So that's very interesting. So when you are, looking to raise money for this, is it like, what's it like? What's it like to raise capital for a company like this in this environment?
Yeah, it was the worst experience of my life because when we started the company, a lot of companies had raised a lot of money. The companies I mentioned that I went to see, all these robotic companies, some had raised $400 million pre-seed to make a pizza robot, $400 million. And they didn't get anything done. $100 million to flip a burger. So when I came, like, hey, listen, man, I got this company. They're like, we've seen this story before.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
burned to hundreds of millions of dollars. It was the biggest mistake of our investment career. So I had to convince them, no, I'm doing it differently, and you shouldn't have backed those companies. And here's why. So it took me a while to get the story out, but along the right way, we met the right investors. So we have sophisticated tech VCs. We have, like I said, famous chefs like Tom Colicchio. So we had a good team of people that came on board to guide us. Our business plan evolved because of the people that invested in us, the advisors that came on board. So we did manage to raise enough capital. And again, we've raised less than $5 million in total. And I have two machines that are ready to go to the market. And one's going to be live hopefully in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow. So that's when it's going to be open, I guess, early spring over there. That's the target.
So the machine, the robot machine, actually, we had a big milestone last week. It was finally checkmarked, ready to be shipped. So it's
Wow.
actually being put on a truck and shipped out to Columbus, Ohio next week.
Nice.
But it will take another 4 or 5 weeks for the airport to do its stuff, all the permits and all
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
stuff. So we're targeting, I think first week of June, maybe earlier.
Wow.
It's going to go live, and then hopefully we'll have a nice big event to call everybody over and celebrate.
So is this an existing Donato's that's there, or is it one that they're building just for this?
No, this is going in Terminal B. They do have Donatos in A and C, nothing in B, so it's going to go in Terminal B.
Oh, very interesting. Sort of a little field test there. So I have a section here of the show, a segment rather, called Real Estate Check-In, and a little bit different for you because not necessarily real estate focused, but I think there's going to be an impact on the real estate space for restaurants. I mean, you talked about having them everywhere, not just kitchens. Sort of maybe other real estate opportunities are you excited about for your brand, for the robots?
So I can tell you, along our journey, we spoke to many different people. Everybody had their own agenda. People at Simon Properties think that this could be the next food court. The Asian bot, the pizza bot, the Indian bot, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, right.
We're like, hey, that's not a bad idea. Folks from Tesla approached us. We have all these stations and no restaurants around there, and people are waiting sometimes for an hour. But we're like, all we need is electricity. You guys have that. Sure, we put a machine out over there. And of course, in airports, we don't have to go in the food court section. We can be next to the gates because it's a self-contained unit. So it gives us a big opportunity for real estate. We can be in places where you couldn't have traditional restaurants. And again, we can scale up pretty rapidly because we're limited by the number of machines we can make. We don't have to go negotiate, one real estate, find a construction team, apply for permits. It's a lengthy process to launch a restaurant. For us, it'll be 2-3 days of an install from our team, and we're ready to go. Give me electrical line. In some cases, give me a water line. We're done.
Wow. And then and then I guess there's somebody tasked with going over there and refilling the sauce and the cheese and all that stuff. How regularly does that have to happen?
So that's why, initially we're not going to do this with individual operators. Companies like HMS, Host Compass, like in a hospital, they already have 100 employees. Imagine the cafeteria, the Starbucks, the vending machines. So give me 20 employees to spend about 4 or 5 hours a day. The machine will tell them when to refill the broccoli. So it's your existing supply chain. Nothing changes. We don't have to retrain your employees. They don't have to have any skills to run a robotic machine. Here's a basket.
Wow.
Dump the broccoli bag in there and you're done. So it's a simple incremental work for these operators. So, and that's why I'm not the guy who's going to go search for a broccoli supplier in Texas. Compass already has that. HMS already has that. So you do you. We manage the machine. We manage the software.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. And when you're talking to these developers and landlords, you mentioned Simon, I'm sure there's some other big name groups that are potentially interested. What is either the most compelling aspect of this? I mean, you're obviously very excited about this, the opportunity here, but what do they find? Like, what are they kind of saying? Like, wow, this is really, other than the food court thing. I mean, are they just finding it as an amenity or like an entertainment piece? Like, what's most attractive to them?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, everybody just wants to have all these brands working well, and everybody's feeling the pressure from labor, right? In every industry, and fast food more than anybody else. So they want to have these operating reliably, number one. In some cases, they need to be run 24/7, like in hospitals. In some cases, there are remote locations, which are difficult to find employees. Airports, difficult to find employees, expensive to find employees. California, minimum wage, $20. So the opportunity to make money, to survive as an entity, even in a food court, if the franchisee is feeling the pain, he's not paying his rent. So how do we make this that all the stakeholders win? The brands get to get a bigger reach for their existing brands, to be in markets they couldn't be in, to make sure the food is on point. And we're monitoring that. And the real estate that is going in, they have something that's interesting, that's flexible, that's 24/7. And again, going in places or areas that were not revenue generating, but now we can put a machine because the traffic is there. All of a sudden, we're generating revenue over here.
Yeah.
And in cases like, charging stations, some of them are remote. I think
Yeah.
Quartzsite is the one that folks at Tesla told me that it's the busiest. And there's like
Wow.
one convenience store that's close by. If we can have 10 of these machines over there, they will
Hmm.
be busy all the time. So it's a new way of examining how does this real estate generate revenue now?
Hmm.
Having a great brand that we know people will already love, imagine making it more accessible, making it closer. You mentioned ghost kitchens. The biggest drawback of ghost kitchens, actually two biggest drawbacks, is to make it profitable, it needs to be far away from city centers because rent is high. And then you have multiple kitchens to operate. It's difficult to staff one kitchen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have 10 different foods. Good luck finding those
Yeah.
employees. And why be so far away? So imagine having a ghost kitchen without labor problems and right next to your house.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, because I'm just thinking now, like I live in New York. So Grand Central Station, downstairs, there's a food court. But, if you're out late and then, maybe you had a couple drinks or you're just late getting home, you want to, nothing's open and the food court's closed, you could have at least some, I could get a pizza, I could get, whatever, I could get a bowl from one of these
Absolutely.
things. So do you think, I think that's an extending kind of business hours, or kind of like how ATMs are inside of banks, like the bank's not open, but hey, you can get the cash out of the machine.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's really good. Wow. That's amazing. Well, I guess automation is not just replacing restaurants; it's just kind of filling the gaps and making things more efficient, and especially when it comes to staffing. So, any founders right now of these restaurant concepts, or CEOs or CDOs, or who are listening and want to kind of future-proof their restaurant, what's kind of one step that they should be taking now?
I think they should be funding companies like mine. I think innovation doesn't happen at traditional companies, right? Ford didn't invent Tesla. It just doesn't happen. You can
Right.
have an innovation department staffed by your last bookkeeper and somebody that's applied to be a marketing director.
Right.
And then traditional companies do one thing really well. They know how to manage this massive infrastructure they have, but they do not innovate. So
Yeah.
I think some of these companies do that. They had to have venture arms to invest in companies. Chipotle has that. They have
Yeah. Right.
the fund doing that. I think that's a brilliant way to do that because now you're letting people innovate. You're just putting a financial risk for yourself, but the rewards can be great and you're front in line for those technologies. So I think
Yeah.
companies should be thinking about that, supporting that infrastructure because they have a lot to gain from it.
Yeah, technology's undefeated, right? We're not going backwards. We're not.
No.
No one's going to say, "Yeah, I totally get that." So just share where listeners can learn more about the brand. We're going to have your LinkedIn contact information in the show notes, but any other information where they get a hold of the Appetronix team, let us know.
Hey, listen, our company, we are not the brand. We are by Appetronix. So we're Donatos Pizza by Appetronix. We are looking for, the next one's going to be an Asian focused cuisine. The machine is already built. Second generation is being built as we speak. So we want to partner with one of the top brands in the Asian food category. And after that, with Mexican food. Those are the three cuisine types we're focusing on. Donatos has the pizza universe, and the other ones are going to come out by the end of the year.
I think Panda Express got to jump on this one. Just going to say it. I don't know if that's who it is. I don't want to blow your cover, but I think Panda Express, I think Taco Bell, all you guys got to get in line for this. This is fascinating. I could talk to you for another hour about it, but thank you for the time today. And I look forward to watching your story.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. Real pleasure speaking to you.
Absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
Cheers.